60 years of gardening advice in 15 minutes. That's what you're about to get. And it's going to completely destroy everything you think you know about growing plants. Most people spend decades making the same gardening mistakes over and over again. They plant, they fail, they try again, they fail worse. It's a cycle of frustration that never ends. But here's what's really shocking. All those years of struggle are completely unnecessary. The secrets that separate master gardeners from beginners aren't complicated, they're just hidden. I discovered this after meeting an 82-year-old woman who's been gardening since she was 22. When she showed me her garden, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Perfect vegetables, stunning flowers, fruit trees loaded with produce, all growing like they were on steroids. But here's the part that changed everything. She told me that everything she learned in her first 40 years of gardening was wrong. The real breakthroughs only came when she discovered the secrets that nobody talks about. These aren't tips you'll find in gardening books or YouTube videos. These are the underground secrets that master gardeners guard like treasure. The shortcuts that turn gardening from a struggle into pure magic. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to learn what took her 6 decades to figure out. So here's the question that could save you years of failure. What if you could skip straight to master-level gardening today? For decades, gardening advice has been passed down as if it were law, stamped into pamphlets, broadcast on television, and echoed in backyard conversations. Yet, beneath the surface, these rules often rest on shaky ground. The moon myth took root in the 1950s when government pamphlets like Moon Gardeners claimed that lunar cycles could boost vegetable yields. By the 1970s, planting by the moon was treated as gospel in gardening circles, with newsletters and manuals urging followers to time their carrots and beans to lunar phases. Even now, online forums debate the best moon phase for sowing seeds. But science tells a different story. In 2008, Oregon State researchers found no difference between lettuce planted on a full moon and lettuce planted on a new moon. A meta-analysis of 12 studies put the effect at less than 0.5%. Still, the myth endures, buoyed by repetition rather than results. Guy Barter of the Royal Horticultural Society summed it up. The moon's gravity drives tides, not the osmotic processes inside a seed. Tomatoes, too, carry a legacy of confusion. In 1893, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled tomatoes should be taxed as vegetables, not fruits, a decision that rippled through generations. Textbooks, garden clubs, and extension bulletins repeated the claim. Treat tomatoes like beans, not berries. Botanically, though, a tomato is a fruit, developing from the ovary of a flower and packed with seeds. Modern genetic studies confirm it. But the legal label stuck, shaping advice on harvest, storage, and soil. The legal definition was a tax avoidance measure, not a botanical one, explains OSU horticulturist Heather Stoven. Yet, the confusion persists. Watering advice has shifted with the times, but the daily watering mantra has proved stubborn. In the 1960s, extension bulletins and TV shows insisted, water every day or risk wilted plants. By the 1980s, commercials for watering cans and hose timers reinforced the message. A 2021 survey found 68% of gardeners water most days, with industry chatter pushing that number to 71%. But research tells another story. A 2019 Oregon State study showed tomatoes watered every 72 hours produced 12% more fruit and suffered 30% less root rot than those watered daily. University of Illinois trials found daily watering leached away 45% more nutrients without improving yields. Plants regulate water uptake through stomata. Excess moisture just encourages fungal pathogens, warns extension specialist Leanne Locker. Compost, once hailed in the 1970s as a natural pesticide, has its own myth. Washington State University experiments found no reduction in aphid numbers on composted lettuce. Compost's real benefit is soil health, not pest control. Compost improves soil health, which indirectly suppresses pest outbreaks by fostering a balanced microbiome, says entomologist Heather Stoven. Myths: planting by the moon, tomatoes as vegetables, daily watering, compost as pesticide, have survived for generations, repeated so often they feel like truth. Yet the evidence tells another story. Eli Whitaker planted her first bean seeds in the spring of 1942 on a patch of war-rationed ground behind her parents' house. She was 20 years old, armed with a government-issued Victory Garden booklet and the kind of hope that comes easy before the first crop fails. For the next 4 decades, Eli followed every rule she could find: plant by the moon, water every morning, compost for pest control, each one promising a garden heavy with tomatoes and squash. The pamphlets changed, but the rules never seemed to. By the 1970s, Eli was a fixture in her neighborhood garden club, swapping cuttings and stories at monthly meetings. She kept a notebook filled with advice clipped from magazines and extension bulletins, all of it organized by season and crop. Her beds were neat, her rows straight, her schedule precise. But year after year, something always went wrong. Tomatoes split or withered, beans yellowed at the tips, lettuce bolted before midsummer. She blamed the weather, the soil, the seeds, never the advice itself. The failures stung, but the promise of next year kept her digging. In 1998, root rot swept through her garden. Entire beds collapsed in soggy ruin, the leaves turning black overnight. The extension office blamed overwatering, but Eli had done exactly what the experts said: water every day, compost for health, keep the soil loose. She stood in the middle of her ruined plot, notebook in hand, and felt betrayed by every rule she'd ever followed. That summer, she stopped writing things down. The notebook went in a drawer, and the garden shrank to a few stubborn herbs clinging to the back fence. 7 years later, at age 83, Eli attended a workshop at the County Extension Center. The topic was soil biology, microbes, fungi, the living web beneath our feet. She listened as the speaker described how most gardening advice ignored the invisible life that actually feeds plants. Eli thought back to her own failures, the years of following instructions that never worked. For the first time, she wondered if the rules themselves were the problem. Eli's story is not about a single mistake or a sudden fix. It's about 40 years spent chasing answers in the wrong places, trusting advice that led to disappointment. Her journey, from hopeful beginner to frustrated veteran, and finally to someone willing to question everything, sets the stage for a different kind of gardening wisdom. One that isn't found in bulletins or TV shows, but in the quiet lessons of lost crops and second chances. For Eli, the real breakthrough began the moment she stopped looking for simple rules and started listening to the garden itself. For decades, soil was treated as little more than a backdrop, something to sterilize, rake smooth, and control. Gardening manuals from the late 20th century insisted on removing every scrap of debris, adding fertilizer, and hoping for the best. But beneath the surface, soil is not an empty vessel. It's a living network, shaping whether a garden flourishes or fails, regardless of how carefully instructions are followed. Jim Patel, a soil ecologist, saw this firsthand in 2018. He divided his backyard plot in two. On one side, he followed the old script: till, fertilize, plant. On the other, he left the soil undisturbed, added mature compost, and dusted on a measured layer of wood ash. By midsummer, the contrast was striking. The untouched side teemed with earthworms and tiny nematodes, breaking down compost into rich humus. Plants grew dense and green. The tilled side, despite perfect watering and fertilizer, turned pale and hard, with stunted growth by July. Patel's experiment mirrored what researchers had begun to uncover. In 2005, the USDA revised its guidance on wood ash, warning that too much could spike pH. But a light sprinkle, just a handful per square yard, released potassium and calcium, minerals vital for flowering and fruiting. By 2020, university trials showed that mature compost didn't just feed plants, it fueled a surge in soil life. Aphid outbreaks faded, not because pests were poisoned, but because a thriving web of beneficial nematodes and fungi crowded them out. A 2021 study pinpointed the real threshold. When organic matter reached 10% by weight, not the 35% some guides claimed, soil mineralization surged and plants drew nutrients steadily through the season. Patel described it as switching on the engine. For years, quick fixes and miracle products promised results, but the answer was always in the soil itself. Ash, compost, and organic debris, used with care, turn dead dirt into a living system. The payoff is more than just healthy plants. Gardens become resilient, needing less outside help and resisting disease and drought. The lesson is clear in Patel's notes and the data alike. Feed the soil, not just the plants, and abundance follows. Dr. Maya Torres stands in a field of sun-warmed tomatoes, clipboard in hand, watching as irrigation lines pulse to life. Her research at Oregon State University shattered the old watering dogma. In the 1990s, extension bulletins still clung to daily routines: water every morning, no matter the weather. But Torres wanted proof, not tradition. She set up side-by-side trials. One plot watered every day, another every 72 hours, each tracked with soil thermometers and nitrate sensors. The results startled even her. Tomatoes on the 72-hour schedule yielded 12% more fruit, their leaves glossy, roots strong. Nitrate runoff dropped by nearly half, 45% less wasted nutrition leaching away. The daily watered plants, so carefully tended, struggled with root rot and dull, stunted growth. Torres's findings echoed in a 2019 OSU study, which confirmed that plants don't drink on our schedule, they respond to temperature, not the clock. Below 68 degrees Fahrenheit, most garden crops slow their water uptake, closing their stomata to preserve moisture. Pouring water on cool soil does nothing for growth, but everything for fungal disease. Plants are not passive, Torres explains. They're intelligent. They open their stomata when the air is warm and dry, not when a timer tells them to. By 2022, the new rule was clear. Water when soil temperatures rise above 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and only as needed, usually every 3 days, not every sunrise. This single adjustment delivers instant returns. Fruit swells, leaves stay upright through the afternoon, and the soil microbiome thrives. Data from OSU's field trials show that smart watering, guided by temperature, not habit, cuts disease rates and boosts yields across tomatoes, beans, and squash. The numbers are impossible to ignore: 12% more harvest, 45% less nutrient loss, and a garden that resists drought and rot. For gardeners raised on the daily routine, this feels like breaking a sacred rule. But the evidence is overwhelming. Abandoning the old schedule is not just a tweak, it's the difference between frustration and abundance. Torres hands her students a simple soil thermometer and a challenge. Trust the plants, not the calendar. The payoff is immediate. Gardens that once limped through July now surge with growth, as if the plants themselves are grateful for the change. The lesson is as clear as the data. Water smarter, not more often, and let the garden's own intelligence lead the way. Planting by the moon has survived every debunking, but the data is now overwhelming. In 2021, a controlled trial tracked hundreds of vegetable beds, each sown at different lunar phases, and measured every sprout, leaf, and fruit. The result? R-squared value of 0.02, statistical noise. Moon cycles explained less than 2% of the variation in plant growth. The gravity that moves oceans has no measurable pull on a carrot seed. Yet, the myth lingers, repeated in blogs and garden clubs, promising harvests that never materialize. Soil texture myths run just as deep. For decades, advice columns insisted that adding a shovel of sand to clay soil would fix drainage. The logic seemed sound. Lighten the clay, let water flow. But in 2020, extension researchers ran side-by-side trials, mixing sand and clay in varying ratios. Anything less than 50% sand didn't loosen the soil, it turned it into a brick. The particles locked together, trapping water and choking roots. Only when sand made up more than half the mix did drainage improve. But at that ratio, the cost and labor are staggering. The shortcut makes the problem worse. These are not harmless old wives' tales. They waste years, money, and hope. The moon doesn't grow your beans. Sand doesn't rescue clay. The numbers are clear, the trials repeated, the results published. Each myth, tested and failed, clears the way for real progress. When the last excuse falls away, something else takes root. The possibility of a garden that finally thrives, not through tradition or wishful thinking, but through proof. The last barriers are gone. The ground is ready for something better. Eli's garden, for years a patchwork of disappointment, now explodes with color and fruit. The change began with a question she never would have asked in her first 40 years. What if the old rules were wrong about which plants belong together? Instead of lining up her tomatoes in lonely rows, Eli tried something she'd only heard whispered about in passing: companion planting, but not the chart in the seed catalog. She planted basil right at the base of each tomato, weaving them so close their roots tangled by midsummer. The result was immediate and impossible to ignore. Hornworms, the scourge of her summers, vanished almost overnight. Leaves stayed whole, fruit ripened unscarred. By August, her neighbors stopped by just to marvel at the difference. In 2022, researchers published a study tracking tomato beds paired with basil against those left alone. The numbers were clear: a 28% reduction in hornworm damage when basil stood guard at the roots. Eli's plot matched the data. She counted the holes, checked the leaves, and saw the difference for herself. "I used to pick off hornworms by the dozen," she laughs. "Now I pick maybe 2 all season." No sprays, no midnight patrols, just a new way of arranging old friends in the soil. The lesson isn't about following a new rule, but about seeing the garden as a living web of relationships. Eli's tomatoes grew taller, the basil richer, and the harvest heavier than any season before. The proof stands in the baskets: plump fruit, unblemished leaves, the kind of abundance that once felt out of reach. After decades of chasing advice that led nowhere, Eli found that real mastery isn't about doing more, but about understanding what the garden is already trying to do. The science caught up, but the soil had always known. For those willing to listen, the transformation is visible, tangible, and finally repeatable. Every year, over 35 million Americans plant a garden, and most still wrestle with the same stubborn failures. Right now, the difference between struggle and abundance isn't luck or talent. It's hidden knowledge, finally within reach. The soil is alive, and mastery waits for those who dare to unlearn. The next season is already asking, will you garden by habit or by revelation? Share your breakthrough below.